I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to show you how this graph right here changed my life and made me more successful in everything I do. I mean, we're going to talk mostly about personal finance and money because that's what this channel is, but you can relate this video to everything in your life. There will be so many aha moments throughout the course of this video, and when you get to the end, you'll finally have a grasp on all these things that you're trying to learn about and all the things you're trying to do in your life, and they will become instantly easier. So this graph is all about describing and explaining how we all think that we are smarter than we actually are, right? This cognitive bias. And it was described by two psychologists, Dunning and Kruger. So this is the Dunning Kruger effect. Very Googleable, very popular, but I never thought to relate it to personal finance or just relate it to anything. I thought it was just another dumb psychological study that was done. And until someone explained it to me, I'm like, oh my God, everything I'm doing in my life is based around this stupid, simple graph that pretty much just shows our knowledge in a field from low to high, like how much we really know and then how much confidence we have in that particular subject. I guess a more common phrase, ignorance is bliss, or the fact that we're too dumb to know we're dumb. We're too incompetent to know we're incompetent until we actually try it and go through many different cycles of the Dunning-Kruger effect. And the good news is there's many ways to overcome the Dunning-Kruger effect, and that's what I'm talking about. How can we make our lives a little bit easier, and how can we learn things better by overcoming the cognitive biases inside this particular study and this particular graph? So here's a picture with the actual curve on the graph, and then you can see these green dots have different places on the graph, and they all describe different moments along the journey of any educational path, right? So this first part, when our knowledge is absolutely low and our confidence is low. So back through my personal finance journey, this is when I didn't know that debt was actually a bad thing. When I didn't know how much money I was spending. This was the, or when the wheel strategy happened, I knew how to sell and I knew how to sell calls and puts, but I didn't know things like the Greeks. And it was just there, right? Guitar in the back. It was just strings. I didn't know anything about it. It was just a guitar. Foreign language. I knew hola and bonjour, but other than that, I knew absolutely nothing about the subject. And for that reason, I didn't have any confidence. If somebody handed me a guitar, I'd be like, if somebody gave me money to invest, I would have no idea what to do. So this is a stage that we're at with anything that we are potentially about to start to learn. Then sometimes later, we think we got it. This is so dumb. How do people not understand this? This is the easiest thing in the world. But a little unknown fact, we know absolutely nothing, right? So this was after 1 month of paying off debt for me, when I had sold off things and I'm selling things on eBay and I'm just crushing the debt. It's going down. I'm like, I'm going to be debt free in a week. What is everyone complaining about? Just pay off your debts. How hard could it be? When it came to trading, this is when you get lucky and you make that first day trade and you're up $200 and you're like, wow, I mean, I just doubled my account. This is the greatest thing ever. I'm going to be the greatest day trader ever. Or the wheel strategy, oh my gosh, I just made 10 covered calls in a row that expired worthless. I am going to be selling hundreds and thousands of contracts of the wheel strategy, and I'm going to retire off the wheel. This all happens in a very, very short time frame after we start to begin to learn things. Once again, the guitar, I learned 3 chords. I'm gonna be the next Jimi Hendrix, right? I learned 8 different verbs in Spanish, and I'm gonna move to Mexico. This happens in literally everything we learn. I think more relatable too. When I had my first kid, a month in, when she was sleeping throughout the whole night and we were bringing her out places because all she was doing is sitting in a car seat, we're like, parenting isn't hard. What the hell is everyone talking about? Everyone complains this is great. I'm still doing all the things I do in my regular life. And then a couple months later, the next part of the graph starts to really, really weigh into what's actually happening and what we actually know. Then things start to get a little bit dicey, right? We start to look at our debt-free graph and we start to maybe loosen our budget a little bit and things aren't progressing that well, or we just don't really understand, or maybe we got a sign on a covered call, or we're getting a little risky, and you start to think to yourself, oh man, maybe there's a chance that I am not a genius. Maybe there is some difficulty to whatever I'm doing, right? This was after I day traded for a couple months and everything was up, and then the markets turned and I was like, I started losing some of my money back. And I'm like, wow, maybe this isn't the easiest thing in the world. I learned a couple chords and then I realized there's hundreds and hundreds of chords and back to the foreign language, all these things. You start to like, wow, what I knew a week ago and I thought I knew everything, that probably wasn't everything. But we don't quit because we're new to this and we're going to dominate this, but then still things just don't seem to be going right and you get to this point. I'm never going to understand this. This is when my account blew up when I was day trading. This is when I made a couple swing trades and I was down, or I loosened my budget, or something broke and I really didn't have the emergency fund that I wanted to have and I had to go further into debt, or I finally paid off a car, but then I kind of wanted a new one and I'm like, oh, I'm crushing debt. I can handle a new car. I'll get that. No big deal. And then you realize like, wow, this is harder than I thought. And it gets to the bottom of this graph, like right at the bottom where my biggest downfall has happened. This is the spot where you really find out that this is going to be a longer, harder journey. This is where, frankly, shit gets difficult. And this is where a lot of people back out. And I've seen it time and time again. You see it in relationships. I saw it with my first business. It was a CrossFit gym. I realized like I don't want to be lifting weights and be fit forever. And if I really want to go to the next level or grow the gym, like, am I willing to do that? Or even with the brewery, Dubco, like when we got to a certain level and I was like, wow, to make the next jump up, that's going to be really hard. Take a ton of time, take a ton of energy. Like I think I'm just good being average. Like the bottom of that graph is average skill set, average knowledge in a field, and your confidence really isn't that good. I can play guitar, right? I can get up there and play the 10 covers that I know and have a great time, but like, would I play in a band? Would I try out for a band? Would I like tell people I'm really good? No, I am just average. Same as language. I could pretty much get around, ask where the bathroom is, order a beer, and tell people I'm drunk and I probably shouldn't be talking to you. Like I'm average in that field. And that's really where I was like with debt too. This is when you're like maybe a year in or you have a ton of debt and you're like, man, this is going to take forever. And this is where you're like, but I'm going to buckle down and I'm going to take the next 2 years and I'm going to pay off my debt, even though it sucks, even with the sacrifices that I've been making. With the wheel strategy, this is when you've been assigned, or maybe you got a little risky, or you gambled a little with your delta, and now you're like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have got assigned, or you chose a stock that you didn't want to get assigned. And you start to realize, like, is this really what I want? And unfortunately for me, this is like where I quit. Now, some things you can't quit, like parenting. When I had my second child and my son and he was difficult, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so much harder. You can't just like give the kids back. So sometimes you have to like bite the bullet and get on with it. But I think that right after this, I'm never going to understand this. This is really where you need to take the bull by the horns and say, I'm going to be successful or not, right? Something we used to say in the 90s, which you're probably not allowed to say anymore. This is where we separated the men from the boys. Right? I'm sorry if that offends or triggers people. We used to say in the 90s. I still say it with my friends from time to time. But, you know, this is what normal people and average people stop at, and those that excel continue on in the graph. And when you continue to work hard and you bust through that average, right, and your knowledge of the field starts to increase, here comes that confidence back, and you start to say like, all right, this isn't a scam. This does make sense. If I set rules and I stick with them, if I just keep paying off a little bit every single month, if I make auto investments into my Roth every single month, things will be okay. If I stick to my delta rules and my cost basis rules, the wheel strategy can be a very, very useful strategy. Day trading, if I have well-defined stops and I have a trading plan that works, I can day trade to some success with a lot of work. You're not exactly an expert, but this is where you start to believe that it's not a hoax. The people that are successful, they really put the work in, right? They really did what they had to do to get there. And this is where you might start to get fired up. Like this is where I'm at with day trading, to be honest. I've been through the highs, the lows, and then I really got smacked a few times and I'm like, all right, I'm really going to start building this up. And it's also where I'm trying to get with my fitness and things like that. I used to be just an average runner, casual. I really, really want to be the best version of myself. So now I'm trying to push through average in everything in my life that I've just been settling for, that I've been settling for average. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I'm sure you can list 5 or 6 or even 10 things that you're just settling for average. And some of that's okay. But I know that you want to be great in other things. So this is like my challenge, or my, like, the reason I'm kind of talking to myself too, like let's cut the bullshit and get through average, and let's take a couple of things and really work hard and understand it's going to make sense if you keep learning and keep doing it. And then we could be above average in some of the things that are really like holding us back or that we want to be. Like, I really want to be fluent in Spanish. I really want to be a great guitarist. Am I willing to put in the work to do that? And here's the last piece of the puzzle before we talk about ways to overcome this graph. And it's like, trust me, it's complicated. This is where you start to become more of a mentor. This is when you have a high subject matter and all the people that are in the phase, they start to ask you questions, or maybe they're at the I know everything phase and you're like, all right, man, okay, it's complicated. I can show you, and some people will follow along, right? That's why mentors and that's why protege, they're great. Right? But it's always these people at the high field. And what you notice, and what I really notice in this graph, and there's many pieces, the more I look at it, the more I really, really understand it, that even at a high knowledge in the field, right? Even when we're considered expert, the 10,000 hours, if you will, even if when we're there, our confidence is still not as high as when we thought we knew everything, right? My dad, when I was a teenager, yep, teenagers know everything. Right? This is a whole course of the life, right? Yeah, I know is when you're a teenager. Then you're in your late teens, early 20s. Then you're in your late 20s, early 30s. And then as you start to get older and you become more content and you have a little bit of money and things like that, it starts to all make sense. And then you get to the ripe old age of being grandparents, and then you start to pass that back. But you never ever reach that I know everything, because to be an expert in a field, you realize that you're always going to be learning and you can never truly know everything. So how do we overcome this? 3 easy things. How do we overcome this? The first is just knowing that this exists. Knowing this graph was here really changed my perspective. I like to look at where I am on this graph for the different things I'm learning. And you will be at different points in the graph, but just identifying it and then being able to move forward and say, okay, it's going to start to make sense. Or, oh my gosh, I think I know everything. I'm about to get smacked. It's all a part of the process. Identifying that you have debt. Identifying that you have some investments and you want to start the wheel. Identifying that, the wheel strategy is really, really hard, and, where am I, and do I know it all? The first is just knowing about this. Just knowing there was a cognitive bias that we all think we're smarter than we really are really, really helped me. The next one's obvious, but keep working. Keep practicing. Knowing that there's always somebody smarter than you and being humble about it has really, really helped me. But also, don't be so humble that you're timid. I don't know the right way to word that. For example, I'll take the guitar. Whenever I'm around people that are really, really good at guitar, I always shut down. If I know that nobody plays guitar, I'll whip my guitar out and I'll play all day long. But as soon as I know somebody else plays guitar, I'm like, but what I should be doing is really asking them questions. I did that with the things that I've been really successful with. The brewery, I used to go around and just walk in the back and talk to brewers, and they would look at me like, who the hell is this guy? And I used to just ask questions. I used to be that pest, but they were always good questions. And what people started to realize over the time was I am trying to learn. I'm trying to set up that mentor-protege relationship. So please, just ask questions. That's why I have a YouTube channel, and that's why I have a Discord, so that people can just feel free to ask me questions whenever they want. That's why I have office hours at schools. You have to, as somebody with a high knowledge in the field, make yourself available for questions for the people that are trying to learn. But more importantly, as somebody that's trying to learn, you have to be willing to get outside your comfort zone and ask people questions that have more knowledge in the field than you. And remember, people that are doing better than you never criticize. I was going to say often, they never do. And I think Matthew McConaughey, somebody said, they're not even thinking about you, to be honest. Why would they criticize? The people ahead of you want to help. The people that are successful in a field want more people successful in their field, right? They like the competition, but they also like to learn from people that are at different stages than them, because even my students that know nothing about physics, I learn something from them every single day. So be able to ask questions. And lastly, be able to take constructive criticism, maybe not even constructive, be able to take criticism, but also be able to question yourself. Sometimes there's not always people around to criticize or give you constructive criticize. Question everything that you're doing. Did I follow my plan today? This is like why journaling is great for me. I get to look back. Did I do the things that I wanted to do? Did I practice the guitar? Did I listen to a podcast in Spanish? All of these things. Did I watch some day traders, or did I do the things that are going to make me progress? And if I don't, I have to hold myself accountable. I talked recently about signing contracts with yourself, right? We tend not to want to break contracts with other people, but we never make contracts with ourselves. If you really want to learn something and you want to be successful, know this graph is here and sign a contract with yourself to at least get to the point where it starts to make sense. Get to the point where you're above average before you decide that it's really not for you. Guys, I hope this video blew your mind like I said it was going to. If you have any questions or even comments, just leave them down in the comment section. This is a great conversational video. Let me know something that the Dunning Kruger effect is affecting you, right? Like, where are you? Tell me something in your life that you're trying to learn and where you're at in this graph. And until I see you in the next one, guys, stay positive. Work really, really hard always. Please be kind to other people. I hope you have yourself an amazing day and an even better tomorrow.